Hello guys, so welcome back. So let's continue with where we left off, right? So we have the server running here. I need us to head to the browser and actually get started with the Storyblok. Of course you need to sign up, but I have already signed up, so I'm just gonna log in. But I also want to open a new tab for developers. So they offer three types of APIs here. You have this one, you have this one, you have this one, but then for this project we are building, we're gonna use the content delivery one. So we are only using this one to deliver content. This one allows you to edit, create, and update the content, and then also this one offers you different functionality. But then for us, we are looking for this one. So when you open here, it's actually gonna take you to the documentation part. Great. So you can see here's the base URL, the one you're gonna need to fetch the content, and then also authentication here. You need to specify your API token here, where you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it in the dashboard, and also for every request you make, you need to have mention what type of content you're looking for. So you have a public one, and then you also have a preview one. So I mean, these are two types of tokens. So you have the public one and then the preview one. The preview one allows you to actually get draft or published version of your content, whereas the public one only gives you access to the published content. For us, we're going to use the preview one because we're not necessarily going to need to publish any for our content, right? So we're gonna need to access the draft, right? So these tokens are for read only, so you won't be able to delete or edit any content. You're just gonna read. And then there's also a bunch of documentation that you need to read here for errors, pagination, stories, and spaces. And also there are operations here if you need to filter any of your content. We're gonna use this one later on, but then for now, actually let's just go back to here and head to the dashboard. You need to sign up, but then I have already signed up, so I'm just gonna log in. So once you are inside the app, what you need to do is to create a space. So this allows you to have multiple projects that don't actually have to interrupt each other. You could have an e-commerce store, you could have a blog, you could have whatever. So we're gonna create a new space here for this particular project, and then we're gonna call it let's just call it YouTube blog. And inside this space, so they've already given you some type of content here for the home page, but then we're gonna delete this one because we don't need any of this one. But then before we can actually start creating content, we need to define how our content is gonna look like, right? We go to components, and then also in assets, this is where it allows you to upload files. You could upload videos, images, documents, and whatever, but then we don't need this thing. We only need to define our component in here. They already have given us 4 different types of components. We don't need them, so we're also gonna delete them. So let's define our content type, or I mean our component, right? So we're gonna call it a post, and then we're gonna say we want it to act as a content type. So whichever post we create, it has to follow the schema of this component. And we create, and then inside this post, we're gonna have we're gonna have a title, we're gonna have text, we're gonna have accept, right? And then we're gonna also finally have content, or you could say we have body, but then I just want to use content here, right? So for every post we create, we need to at least have all these in our post, right? And then for content, we want to change the type here and make it a markdown, so we can be able to have a markdown, right? So we can have some HTML, be able to use lists, bolding, italics and everything. So after that, you need to save the schema and you head back to content, right? So let's create a folder here. We're gonna say this folder is post. So inside this folder, we're gonna have the posts. And then here you can define, they say default content type. We can define the type of content that we want inside this folder post. And then we can choose the existing one, and we have already defined it here. So each and every post we create under this folder, it has to be of this content type post, and it was created in here. Then now we have a folder on, of course it's empty. So once you get into this folder and you create a new entry, it has to follow the content type that it was given. And then now you can see that the chosen content type for this is a post, right? And then we can give this entry a name, and then we can say this is our first post. This is what is going on. This is our first post, and you can see we have a slash here, so we're going to use this to actually uniquely identify this post from other posts, just like an ID. But then for us, we're going to use this to select it from the rest. And then you can save. Once you save, you will actually see that the content that we defined, or the component that we defined in the components, is actually here. So you have title, you have text, you have accept, and then you have content. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just going to populate these and then at least have like 5 posts, so that we can be able to have them once we connect with our front end. So I'll quickly do that. So yeah, so now I just need to create the last one, right? So we at least have 5. This is our last post. The weather is getting hot. Weather hot getting, and we can know I need to paste this one here, and let's say the point of using word till here, and post it here and save. So you can go back and you see that we have 5 posts, or we have 5 entries under the folder posts, right? So now we need to work on how we actually get to request this data in our front end. So let me open this one. If you come here, you can see you have an option here on how to access the data through the API, right? So for us, we are only focusing on the draft one, so we're gonna click here. So it opens up this. So it essentially shows you what you actually going to get once you make a request to get a certain post, right? So you're gonna get an object here. It contains an object, another object called story, and inside the story you can see we have bunch of information about that particular story. But then the content that we defined is actually this part here. You can see you have the text, you have the title, the content, the accept, and everything. So yeah, what we are actually interested in is the stuff that is in here. And then you also can get to see some stuff like when this was published. You can see when this was published, and then of course it's null because we haven't published this. And but then you can see when it was created. So this is basically the API call here. You can see you go into post. This is what you need to mention the version that you need, the draft version. And also this token must always be specified for every call you make. And then also the CV for caching, but then don't really, we're not really going to get much deep into this part. So this is for getting a specific post, which is, this is our last post. So if you are looking to get every story or every post that we created, we're just going to remove this part here and make that request into stories. So this is the call, and then we mentioned the parameters here. So this is the stories that we get. So we have 5 in total, and then you can see here it mentions that you have 5 items. So yeah, that's pretty much it. What we need to do now is actually head to our front end and start consuming this content. But then first you need to install Axios. We're gonna use Axios for the purpose of this project. And what you need to do is npm install Axios and hit enter. So yeah, go ahead and do that. So it's done installing Axios, right? And so let me open here. So this is basically how it looks like right now. We are not using the content from our CMS, right? So I need us to go into the source folder here and create another folder. We can call it what? Let me call it the API and api.js. And then in here, I want us the first function that we implement, we actually set up the Axios that we installed, right? So we need to set up the Axios instance that we're going to use to fetch data. So we're gonna use import. Okay, the function is, let's say, constant Axios instance return dot create. We're creating an instance, and then this instance we're gonna give it certain information. No base URL. Actually, instead of using the URL, this one, where is it? Let's go back on top of the page. So instead of just using this part, we're gonna append it up until the stories part here. So with the stories part here, it means you are actually looking for everything, right? So yeah, we're going to take it from here up until we take this part. This is gonna be our base, and you also need to have those params, which is your token. Mine is this one. So how to get this token? You actually essentially go in here and go into settings and API keys, and then you're gonna see your preview token key here. So this token will allow you to preview the content. You won't be able to edit or do anything, edit, delete, or it's only in read mode, right? So this is our token we're gonna use. So since it needs to be mentioned for, or it needs to be attached for every request, we need to have it in here. And then what else is needed? You can see that they also mentioned that you need to specify the content or the version of the content that you're looking for. So version draft. So we are looking for the version content because we're not going to publish any of these. So now this is actually how our Axios instance looks like. You can also specify the timeout, like if it fails to get or to fetch the data or post the data within this time. Let's make it 5,000 here. So yeah, this is pretty much our function or our Axios instance. So we're just gonna plug in this thing to make the request instead of it's better this way instead of having to rewrite every part of these for every request we make. So Another function we need is to actually to fetch the data, right? We're going to fetch all posts, and it's gonna be an asynchronous function. So let me use try cache here. Constant response await Axios instance. And so since we have the stories part here, so it means this is actually our base where we are going to get all the posts, right? So we don't have to have anything like slash post whatever. We're just gonna leave it like this, and it's going to return every single post that we have on our dashboard. And then remember, this is in the draft version, so it's gonna return every draft version. And then we can do this, access the data, because we are using Axios, and return data here. And then here, instead of actually, we're just gonna do it like this simply. So now it means we have fetched all our posts, right? But then we also need to make sure that it actually fetches the right information. But then yeah, we're gonna run it in the few minutes. I want us to implement another one here called fetch post, and also it's gonna be a specific one, and this function needs to fetch a certain post, right? So how it needs to know which kind of post or which post it needs to fetch, instead of having to use an ID, we're just gonna use a Slack. So we're gonna fetch a post using Slack, like this structure the data, and await fetch, not fetch, actually Axios instance, and get. So if you remember here, so this is the API that call that you need to make to get all the stories. But then if you go back here, you can see in order to get a specific post, it's gonna go to stories, forward post, which is the folder, and then the Slack of that specific post that you're looking for. So that means we already have the stories, so we need to go into posts and Slack. So we're gonna do this and concatenate the string. So this will actually go fetch that specific post, and we're gonna return the data here. So or return now, let's just return now. So this fetches a specific post, this searches or actually gets all the posts. And then you can also use pagination here, that you can mention how many entries or how many posts you want per page, and then which page you're actually moving to, right? So by default, we're gonna say we want page 1, and then how many posts we need per page. We need at least 10. So it means you need to pass in this information into Axios to know, okay, beside actually going here, we also need to pass in this information. So we can have another object here, say params. If you go back here with the documentation pagination here, you can see you can mention the page number you're on, and then how many entries you need per page, right? And then some other stuff which we are not interested in. So you can mention the page, and then the per page. The per page is actually like the number of posts you need per page. For us, we're just gonna make a default. So if you don't mention how many posts we need or which page we are on, by default it's gonna be 10 and 1. So we're gonna have page and the page here. So yeah, this is pretty much it. This fetches all the posts. By default is gonna go to page 1 and return 10 entries. Remember, we only have 5, so we wouldn't really see much. Let's actually make it 2, so it actually returns 2 instead of all the posts, which are 5. So now we actually need to go into our pages and plug in all these functions and see how they work. So the page that actually needs this function is the home page, which is this one. And of course we need to move this div here into its own component. Let's make it quickly like this and say article, and then in the article folder we're gonna have this article.module.css. So this is what we need. Paste here. And link is not defined. And we also want to use the styles. Go back here and actually delete everything that is an article. We're going to remove this and article. Let's save and head back here. So yeah, we are only posting one article. Okay, the styling. So remember, the styling for the article was coming from the home page. So now that we moved the article into its own file, so we need to grab the styling, and then it's this one, and cut it and paste in here. So yep, it's okay now. So now we have the article, and the article takes in, we're gonna have a prop and say article or post. We're gonna say it's a post. We can also use the console log, but then not now. Let's go in here. So we're going to use as you would have guessed, the get static props function, which will fetch our, and then it has to be an asynchronous function which will fetch our data. And then what we need to do is, and also you must take note that whenever you have a console log in this function, it will actually not be the console log will not actually be on the browser but on your terminal, because this function does not run on the client side. It actually runs in the server. So whenever you have a console log in here, you actually have to open up your terminal. So in this page, we are in the home page. It has to fetch, sorry, it has to fetch the all the posts, right? So we can say post and await. Let's see, post, await. And remember, we have implemented the function called fetch all posts, and it has these two arguments. It has per page and the page. We're not really going to specify now because we need to be page 1, and then we also need per page to be 2. And you need to return an object that has props, and then in our props we're going to have posts. So these props will be passed into this component or into this page. So you can go in here and distract from our props that you are actually looking for the post. And then now you can actually use the console log, because we want to use the browser to see if we are really getting anything. What's really the problem? Because I don't see any. You know what, let me refresh this. Let me open up the console object. What is this? There we have it. Let me see, run it again. So it actually mean, yeah, that is thing, because Remember, get static props runs on build time, so you actually need to refresh this so it actually runs. So yes, we have an object here, and then we are looking for the stories, right? So instead of having this information here, we could simply go back to fetch all posts and say we are looking for the stories part. So now that we have stories, we have this object, and then the object is an article. That means we can actually put it on our front end. And you can also see that the length of the stories object is 2, because we mentioned we only need 2. So you can see it works. So we're just gonna say 10 here. Let's go back to our home page and and print out these. So we're gonna have post and the map, say post, return an article. Let me cut this one here, and then the key, let's see here, inside one article you have an ID, so we can use post.id. And remember, we had a prop of post, so we can post it in here. So if you go into article, you're going to have access to post, and then let's destructure it and get the values that we need from it, from post. So from post we need, since we don't have the published ad, we're going to use the created ad, right? What's the problem now? Posts is not a function. It's not a function. What is it? Nah, it's delusional. I'll get back to it. Let's go back here and get the values that we need. We need the created ad. I'm actually gonna try to grab the published ad too. And remember, we have content. If you still remember, we have content which contains all the information that we created in the CMS. So we have the content here. Inside the content, we have accept, we have text and title. So for us, we need the title and the accept. Yes, we need the title and the accept. So we're gonna use copy here and have the accept here. Here we're gonna have the title, and then published date, we're gonna have something like this. So we're going to try look at this. So if you look at the created ad, you can see the date, and then this is a date, and then this is a time. So we're gonna split it at t and get the first value here. So we're gonna use the split at t. This function returns an array, and then we're gonna say we need the first element in the array, and then we're gonna say if this value here is undefined because we haven't published the content, we're gonna print out the created ad information instead of the published ad. So we can save this, and let me close this. This guy is crazy. Post is not a function, it's a function. Wait, let's see, let me use this. Yes, so these are all the posts that we have created on our CMS here. If you go into content, posts, you can see this is our last post, blah 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 blah, and this is what we are getting so far. So now we need to ensure that once we click on a certain post or a blog, we actually get more information about it, right? So this is where the read more comes. So we're gonna go into blog. This is the blog page. This is the blog page where we see more information about the blog. And then for the purpose of the front end, we just name the file the index. But then now we're going to change it because we're going to use dynamic routing, and we're going to fetch every file in this. We're going to fetch every post in this file using the Slack. So it means the content in this blog dynamically changes, because it could be the first blog, it could be the second blog, right? So we're gonna use dynamic routing, and then we need to fetch the data. We need to use what the get static props, and has to be, you need to export it. If you don't, voila, you're gonna get some problems. And get static props, these we can say data, I don't know, await fetch post, and we need to fetch it by using a Slack, right? We can do this. So to actually get the information about the Slack, so the Slack in here, the information that will be in here, let me give you example. So our post or our URL now looks like localhost blah blah 30,000. So once we want to fetch a certain post, we're gonna go into blog. So the page here is gonna be going to a blog, and then the information here is gonna be the Slack, right? So we need to be able to access this, and then let's use this. This function takes in this argument, and then from it you can actually extract the information from this URL here. This URL here, you can extract this information. How do you do that? Simple. So you're gonna say contents and Slack from context, or you can simply call it params, so you actually know that this information is related to the parameter in here, or the params, right? And then now that we have the Slack here, it means we can pass it into this function to get that specific post that we are looking for. And of course, we need to pass in that information into this page here. We're gonna have a post, just like we did in the home page. We're gonna have props, and we're gonna have a post of data, and then the post is gonna be data. And then also, since we're using dynamic routing, we need to use another function from Next called get